Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we're diving into something super personal and, honestly, wildly misunderstood. We're talking about the psychology of doorbell dread. If you've ever felt this sudden, completely inexplicable wave of exhaustion hit you when you know company is on the way, well, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to map out the hidden psychological realities of introversion together. And as we unpack this, you're going to see that what you might be experiencing, it's not a character flaw at all. It's actually a sign of an incredibly rich, demanding inner life. So let's get right into it and uncover exactly what's going on inside your mind when that chime rings. Picture this for a second because it's a super visceral scenario. You're at home, right? You're comfortable, you're settled, you feel completely whole. And then, suddenly the doorbell rings. Maybe you freeze in your tracks. Or honestly, maybe you instinctively duck behind the sofa so they don't see you through the front window. Immediately, something inside you just contracts. It isn't fear, exactly, and it definitely isn't anger. It's just this quiet, immediate resistance. A part of you that was totally at peace literally a second ago is suddenly on high alert. You don't even dislike the person standing on your porch, but if you are being completely honest with yourself, the thought of letting them in right now costs you something you can't quite put a name to. Why does the exact thing most people consider a totally normal, pleasant part of life feel, to you, like an intrusion into something sacred? It's like you're living in this fascinating dual reality. On the outside, your exterior reaction is flawless. You smile, you put on a fresh pot of coffee, you say absolutely all the right things, and you play the perfect host. But your interior reaction? Completely different story. Inside, you are quietly counting down the minutes until that door finally closes again, the silence returns, and you can actually take a real breath. For years, you might have wondered, what is wrong with me? But the legendary psychiatrist Carl Jung spent decades studying this exact contrast. And he didn't see this as a flaw you need to fix. He saw it as a massive signal that something rare and profound is happening inside you. To really understand this, we've got to look at how you define your space. Jung called this concept the inner sanctum. For most folks, a home is just physical, right? It's walls, furniture, a place to sleep and eat. But for highly sensitive, deeply interior people, it is something else entirely. Your home is literally the one place in the world where you do not have to perform. It's the space where that polite, agreeable version of you that exists for everyone else can finally just rest. It's a psychological sanctuary. It's where the fragmented thoughts that got interrupted during your busy day can finally finish, and where feelings you had to manage out in public can safely surface. You don't just live in your home, your psyche recovers there. And because your home acts as this ultimate inner sanctum, a visitor, even someone you absolutely adore, even someone who means perfectly well, can completely dissolve that fragile equilibrium the literal second they walk through the door. Your nervous system doesn't register their arrival as just a casual change of plans. It registers it as a profound disruption. The careful, quiet internal order you've been building up all day is suddenly turned upside down. Now, Jung emphasized something absolutely crucial here. This nervous system disruption isn't antisocial behavior. Not at all. Rather, it's the sign of a psyche that takes its own interior life very seriously. A person who cannot function without this interior space isn't broken. You are just built for a kind of depth that inherently requires protection to maintain its order. So what exactly happens when that equilibrium gets broken? Well, you put on what Jung called the persona. This is the automatic social face we present to the world. It's the version of ourselves that is, perfectly appropriate for company. Now, you don't put this mask on deliberately, and you certainly don't do it dishonestly. It happens totally automatically. It's the exact same way a person instinctively straightens their posture when they walk into a crowded room. Your words become a bit more chosen, your expressions are managed, and your attention is suddenly split between what you actually think and what is socially appropriate to say out loud. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that there is a massive divide in how we actually process psychic energy. For extroverts, sliding into this persona is completely effortless. They don't experience it as a performance at all, and in fact, socializing actually replenishes their energy. But for introverts, the shift is highly noticeable. You literally feel yourself become someone slightly different the moment another person enters your space. And because introverts draw their life force from within, from silence and from solitude, the constant maintenance of this persona is a heavy, heavy drain. It requires a very specific kind of energy, and it depletes rapidly the longer you interact. Which brings us to the true toll of hosting. The exhaustion you feel isn't just about the time or the physical effort of keeping up a conversation. The real cost is losing contact with yourself. When the outside world demands your energy for too long, and that persona has to be maintained way past its natural limit, you lose that quiet, continuous thread of inner awareness that keeps you feeling like you. You start to feel this restless vibe with no clear cause, maybe an irritability that seems totally out of proportion. And restoring that inner thread requires exactly what a visitor makes impossible: a closed door and absolute silence. This brings us to Jung's deeper psychological purpose for solitude, a really fascinating concept he called individuation. Individuation is basically the lifelong movement toward becoming fully, completely, and authentically who you actually are. It's the process of integrating all the different parts of yourself that live beneath that social performance. And here's the absolute key takeaway. Jung observed that for highly interior people, this critical inner process absolutely requires quiet to proceed. It simply can't happen when you're busy managing someone else's comfort. Because the truth is, individuation happens in the spaces between deep integration, meaning-making, and what psychologists call shadow work. Yeah, that stuff doesn't happen in the middle of polite small talk about the weather. It happens in the moments when no one is watching, when no one needs a single thing from you, and when your mind can finally turn its attention completely inward. When you feel that really strong pull toward an empty room, it's not because you dislike people. It's because your mind is desperately trying to do important, necessary work that requires the exact conditions that company destroys. Listen, if you've spent years feeling guilty about the massive wave of relief you feel when plans get canceled, or if you secretly wish the doorbell would just stop ringing altogether, please hear this. You are not a bad person. You are not cold. You are not selfish. And you are for sure not failing at the basic requirements of being human. You are simply someone whose inner life is unusually rich and demanding. Your inner life doesn't run on social fuel, it runs on silence. It requires the specific, irreplaceable experience of being completely alone in a space that belongs entirely to you. Okay, let's dive into exactly why visitors are so physically draining. Jung pointed to a few very specific reasons, and the first is unconscious perception. When someone enters your space, you don't just experience their physical presence. You automatically absorb their emotional state, their unspoken tensions, and the energy they're carrying around without even knowing it. And you feel all of this as a real, often exhausting physical weight. This isn't just your imagination playing tricks on you. It's a heightened sensitivity to the psychic field of others, and it runs automatically without you even choosing to flip the switch. Another super fascinating layer to this is what Jung called the shadow speaking. Now, the shadow is the part of yourself that you haven't fully integrated yet. Sometimes a visitor, completely unintentionally, touches on unresolved wounds, unfinished questions, or parts of yourself you're actually still getting to know. And when this happens, your intense resistance to their presence isn't actually about the visitor at all. It's your own unintegrated shadow reacting to whatever their presence stirs up inside of you. So when we pull all of Jung's insights together here, a crystal clear picture emerges. It isn't just about needing a quick nap. We're talking about a profound psychological ecosystem. We unconsciously absorb the emotions of others, which is super taxing, and because of that, our psyche absolutely requires a kind of order that can literally only be built in complete quiet. In that quiet, your solitude is incredibly productive. It's not empty time. Often, what feels like resistance to visitors is actually our unresolved shadows speaking to us. Embracing this solitude is the true beginning of inner truth, where we finally hear the quiet voice that constantly gets drowned out in company. Ultimately, solitude is the necessary condition to become fully ourselves. Desiring an empty house isn't an escape from life. It's a deeply honest engagement with it. So, the crucial point is this. When you dread the doorbell, what you are actually doing is protecting the most honest version of you. And why this matters so much is that this version of you doesn't have to be on. It can think and feel at its own unhurried pace without having to constantly translate its thoughts into a polite, presentable package for guests. It's not damaged, it's not avoidant, it is just genuinely you. And becoming someone else for guests, even temporarily, costs something. It compounds over time, leaving you feeling totally hollowed out. Jung saw this dynamic so clearly, and he left us with an incredibly profound thought. He said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around. It comes from being unable to express what truly matters to you. You aren't lonely because you prefer an empty house. You are actually most yourself there." Protecting that space, insisting on it, and saying no to the doorbell when no is your true feeling isn't some act of selfishness. It's an act of sanity, and it is one of the most honest things a person can do. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with one final question to chew on. What becomes possible for you when the house is finally empty and quiet? The next time you feel that quiet, immediate resistance when the doorbell chimes, I want you to remember that you are built for a depth that requires protection. You don't have to explain it to anyone, that now you finally have the words to understand it for yourself. Honor your true self, and honor the sacred silence you require. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep learning.